Hospitals are places of healing and hope, but for some, they're the final destination. With countless lives lost within their walls, it's no wonder some hospitals have become hotspots for paranormal activity. Tonight, we're taking you on a terrifying journey to explore 5 of the most haunted hospitals around the world. Are you ready? The haunting of Waverly Hills Sanatorium. In the early 1900s, Waverly Hills was built to combat one of the deadliest epidemics of its time, tuberculosis. By the 1920s, thousands of people had come here hoping for a cure. But what many didn't know was that the treatments at Waverly Hills were as dangerous as the disease itself. The use of experimental procedures, the harsh isolation, and unsanitary conditions led to a death toll that would haunt the halls for decades to come. But these were not the only horrors that plagued Waverly Hills. As death claimed more and more victims, one thing became clear. Waverly Hills had no place for the dead to rest. Enter the infamous Death Tunnel, a 500-foot underground passageway that was used to carry the bodies of the deceased away from the eyes of the living. Patients who survived the disease might never have known the horror that unfolded here. But those who didn't were moved silently in the night, their bodies hidden from the living. Some say that the spirits of these lost souls still wander these halls, trapped in the darkness of the tunnel. They say the air is thick with the feeling of something watching, and the cold touch of unseen hands lingers long after you've passed through. Visitors and paranormal investigators have long reported strange occurrences within Waverly Hills, from unexplained footsteps echoing through the hallways, to the flicker of lights and cold spots that send chills down your spine. But it's not just the sounds of the dead that haunt this place. There are stories of figures in old-fashioned hospital gowns, roaming the halls. Some are said to be the very spirits of the patients who died here, while others are more malevolent. One of the most infamous apparitions is that of a nurse who, tragically, took her own life after the death of a loved one. It's said she can still be seen wandering the halls in a state of eternal grief. Some believe she's searching for her lost lover. Others say she's searching for something far worse. Room 502 is perhaps the most notorious of all. This room has seen more than its share of suffering and tragedy. First, there was the death of a nurse in the 1920s, rumored to have been a suicide. Then, decades later, a second nurse met the same fate. But that's not all. Visitors have reported hearing the sounds of a woman's voice crying out, and a cold, oppressive feeling that grows stronger the closer you get to the room. Many say it's the spirit of the nurse, forever trapped in the agony of her untimely death. But others believe there is something darker at play here. Something that feeds on the sorrow of the lost souls who died within these walls. Today, Waverly Hills stands as a ghostly reminder of the past. Despite its decay, it still draws those brave enough to seek out the paranormal. It has become a popular destination for ghost hunters and thrill seekers alike. But for those who venture inside, one thing becomes clear. It's not just a building of brick and stone. It's a place that carries the weight of its haunted past. The haunting of Ararat Lunatic Asylum, Australia's most disturbing ghost story. Built in 1867, the Ararat Lunatic Asylum was originally intended as a place of care and treatment for the mentally ill. But what happened within its walls was anything but compassionate. Over the years, the asylum became infamous for its mistreatment of patients, overcrowding, and questionable medical practices. Stories of abuse, neglect, and even experimentation run rampant. Tales of patients subjected to electric shock therapy, lobotomies, and brutal confinement. The more patients arrived, the more the building crumbled under the weight of human misery. As the years wore on, the asylum's reputation grew darker, leading many to believe that the spirits of those who suffered here still roam its halls. Today, the Ararat Lunatic Asylum is known as one of the most haunted places in Australia. Paranormal investigators have flocked here, hoping to capture evidence of the spirits that linger in the asylum's decaying walls. Over the years, we've captured countless EVP recordings, strange cold spots, and even seen shadowy figures moving in the darkness. One of the most chilling experiences I had was in the E ward. It's the part of the asylum where they kept the most dangerous patients, the ones they couldn't control. We heard voices, whispers, and then a door slammed shut by itself. No one was near it. One of the most infamous tales comes from the tunnels of terror. Beneath the asylum, hidden away from the public eye, are a series of dark tunnels. These tunnels were used for secretive operations, including transporting patients who were deemed too dangerous to be seen. But some say these tunnels are not empty. Ghostly figures have been seen wandering them, and the sounds of chains dragging across the floor echo through the darkness. The Ararat Lunatic Asylum stands as a monument to suffering, its crumbling walls still hiding the tortured souls of its past. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, there is no denying the dark history that lingers here. And perhaps, as the years go on, the spirits of those who never found peace will continue to haunt the halls forever. Belitz Heilstätten Hospital, Germany. Deep in the forests of Brandenburg, Germany, stands a decaying monument to a forgotten time. Belitz Heilstätten Hospital, once a sprawling medical complex, now lies abandoned and decaying, a relic of the past. But this is no ordinary abandoned building. It's a place that has seen death, madness, and mystery. Built in the late 1800s, Belitz Heilstätten was originally designed as a tuberculosis sanatorium. Its picturesque, castle-like architecture and serene surroundings belied the horrors that would unfold within its walls. But as time passed, its purpose shifted. By the time the First World War broke out, the hospital had already transformed into a military facility. It became a treatment center for wounded soldiers, including none other than Adolf Hitler, who was recovering here after being injured during the Battle of the Somme. But the tragedy didn't end there. As the years wore on, Belitz Heilstätten became a symbol of suffering. Its walls bore witness to countless deaths, the cries of the dying, and the secrets that would never be told. And though it was eventually abandoned in the 1990s, something remains behind. Something restless. They say that Belitz Heilstätten is haunted. Visitors who dare to enter its crumbling halls speak of strange sounds echoing through the abandoned rooms. Whispers, footsteps, the faint sound of a piano playing. Some claim to have seen figures moving through the broken windows, only to find the rooms empty when they step inside. And then there's the story of the abandoned morgue, where the restless spirits of those who died under cruel conditions are said to gather, seeking revenge on those who dare trespass. Could it be that the spirits of the forgotten dead are now the true inhabitants of Belitz Heilstätten? Reports of ghostly encounters, shadowy figures, and the sensation of being followed are all too common for those who enter this cursed place. One visitor claimed to have seen a tall, dark figure in one of the hospital's operating rooms. It stood completely still, but when the visitor turned to leave, it was suddenly standing in front of them. Its face, nothing but a shadow. But the most terrifying thing about Belitz Heilstätten is that it refuses to be forgotten. It remains a place where the line between the living and the dead is blurred. No matter how many years pass, the stories of those who died here linger like a curse. Ganjeom Psychiatric Hospital, South Korea. Built in the 1970s, this psychiatric hospital was initially intended to provide care for the mentally ill. However, over the years, disturbing reports began to surface. Patients went missing, mysterious deaths were recorded, and whispers of abuse began to spread like wildfire. It's said that the hospital became a dumping ground for people society wanted to forget, a place where life was stripped away and something far more unsettling took root. As the decades passed, the building fell into disrepair. By 1995, the hospital was abandoned. But by then, it had already become infamous. The stories of strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and an overwhelming sense of dread were enough to keep most people far, far away. Some say the spirits of former patients still roam these halls, trapped in a limbo between life and death. It's not just the building that's haunted. It's the very souls of those who suffered within its walls. But there's something even more terrifying. A group of paranormal investigators who ventured into the hospital in 2018 recorded something that chilled them to the bone. While exploring the hospital, they reported hearing disembodied voices, footsteps echoing in empty rooms, and lights flickering on their own. But the most unsettling part? They were not alone. Something was watching them. Some say the hospital wasn't just haunted. It was a place of evil, where twisted experiments were conducted in the name of treatment. Rumor has it that during its final years of operation, the hospital became a testing ground for dangerous, unethical psychiatric treatments. And some believe these experiments may have pushed the patients beyond the brink of madness, creating a malevolent energy that still lingers in the air. And there's a final piece to the mystery of Ganjiam. According to local legend, the ghosts here are not just restless, they're angry. Some believe they were driven to madness by the cruel and inhumane practices of the hospital staff. Others believe something even darker, a curse tied to the very foundation of the hospital itself. Whatever the truth is, one thing is clear. Ganjiam Psychiatric Hospital is not a place you want to visit, unless you're prepared to face the horrors that linger in the dark. The haunted old Changi Hospital. Built in 1935, Changi Hospital was once a place of care. But during World War II, it became a site of unimaginable suffering when it was taken over by the Japanese as a military hospital and a place of torture. The men and women who were held captive here, many of them prisoners of war, experienced things so brutal, so vile, that their souls are said to still linger, trapped in this forsaken place. But the horrors didn't end with the war. During the Japanese occupation of Singapore, Changi Hospital was transformed into a center for cruel experiments and merciless torture. Prisoners were subjected to unspeakable torment. Many lost their lives here. The hospital's dark history is marked by stories of men being dragged into its sterile hallways and never returning. And in the shadows of its crumbling rooms, something began to stir. It is said that, to this day, the spirits of those who died here, both prisoners and patients, still walk the halls. Many have reported seeing ghostly figures, flickering lights, and hearing the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing in empty corridors. There are those who claim to have seen the Gray Lady, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her face twisted in pain, forever searching for the loved ones she lost. Others speak of the tortured screams of soldiers still trapped in the very walls, their souls unable to escape the horrors they endured. And room 207, it is said that a terrible curse lingers. Many who have dared to enter this room have never come back the same. Some have fled in terror, while others have been found broken. One visitor, a paranormal investigator, went in alone, only to be found hours later, his mind shattered, his body cold, with no memory of what had happened. No one truly knows what happens in room 207, but many say the walls themselves have tasted blood. It's said that the spirits here do not want to be disturbed, and if you are foolish enough to intrude, they will make sure you regret it. Whether it's the restless spirits of former patients or the echoes of trauma and death, these hospitals remind us that some places hold onto their dark histories. If you've visited any of these haunted locations, share your stories in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more chilling tales. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.